Now we are going to get the show underway in just a few moments, which is really exciting. I think I did it right this week. I apologize for last, and I completely did a big fat fail. That was awesome. Looks like it's set to go. Thank you, Josh, for all of your time and effort this week and helping to get the shows up. I know Marcia was really excited to finally have her wish granted to hear the show from last week.
I did. It was a good one too.
Oh, there's Dr. Phillips. Dr. Phillips, your wall is really white. I wondered if you can, why don't you go into the video and get a virtual background, and you can actually, with that white background, you can get my background and put it up. You can get a virtual background.
How do I do that?
You're talking to somebody like he knows what he's doing about it, Kim.
I know.
I know. Well, we still have 5 minutes. So what you can do with your background, so if you download the graphic that I had sent you via email, if you actually download it onto your computer, then what you can do is go into the Zoom tools where it says video, and there's a little arrow, and then there's a virtual background, and it allows you to upload that.
Okay.
Awesome. And I don't know if Dr. Dansinger is on. There he is. I see him. I love him. He's my hero. And is Cricket on somewhere? Cricket said she would be on, but we are waiting for you. Was that Cricket? No, that's Sally. Oh, Sally King. It's good to meet you. And I see
you too.
And I see Jean.
Hey,
hello. It's so great to see you guys. Oh, and there's Heinz. Oh my gosh. And Jane.
I am here. I am in bed with a bad cold, so I'm not going to have you look at me, but I'm here to listen.
Oh, good. Yeah, I do have a dimmer here, but I like it a little bit brighter because it washes out my face a little bit. And I like my face washed out.
Kim, is it under backdrop or something? What would you have called it?
Yeah, backdrop.
Backdrop.
Yep, it says you can choose virtual background. And when you choose virtual background, under backdrop and effects, go to the little right-hand side. There's a little plus button, and you can add it.
Okay. All right. I still can't. Let me just, still can't. Oh, here we go.
We're going to make you tech savvy.
Are you on a computer or an iPad, Dr. John?
I like your mug, Douglas.
What's that?
Heads up, everyone. We got 3 minutes till we air live.
Thank you so much, Colin. I promise not to be so verbose today. I can't make any promises for Dr. Dansinger, though, because he has a lot of great information to share. So I'm going to just let him have the floor.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Dr. Dansinger.
Hi.
It's so good to see you.
Guys, it's great to see you.
Michael, hey, how are you? Good to see you.
Hey, terrific. How are you, John?
It's
Kim, did you get my question?
Video's a little
I didn't get your question.
Let's see.
I was wondering if at some point Dr. Dansinger could discuss pre-diabetes and how to avoid going full.
That's a really good question. Do you want to ask that? Just because also, Marcia, my concern is that pre-diabetes in this country is brushed off and not even, patients are like, oh, pre-diabetic, you're fine. Just, keep an eye on it. Versus in the UK, my understanding is that pre-diabetes is diabetes and it's treated the same.
Oh, well,
I wonder if that would make a difference.
Yeah, it's a great topic. It'll be terrific to have a discussion about it.
and how to test your blood, and I mean, all kinds
Yeah.
of things. Okay, good. Thank you.
And Dr. Dansinger, I want you
Hey,
to
folks,
also
I'm going to
meet.
cut in real quick. Just going to ask some producer questions over to
Yes,
Kim.
please.
Kim, a quick question for you. I have your medical notepad here as the Dr. Shimsimski one. Do you want to keep that in, or do you want to keep that segment a little longer so you can talk with the doctor?
I think the doctor is probably going to have a lot to say. Um, I have a feeling, so I would rather you can hold it in case we don't have anything to say and it goes silent. But I have a feeling that I don't think there's going to be a dull moment.
I got you. All right, everyone. Roughly about 1:10 till we air.
Thank you. And Dr. Danziger, I want you to just Joshua is here. He's also our new producer for all of our other videos and such, and he's helping with the show. And I want to introduce you because Dr. Danziger, you and I talked about getting you on a teleprompter and just taking each section from our book and just kind of running through them and having you just voice them, and we can put them up as quick separate video pieces. But it's all the content you've already done. I just would have to take it separate, put it in a prompter for you, and then you can just work with me and Josh and just knock them out, maybe in just a couple of hours.
Joshua, it's nice to meet you. Kim, thanks for connecting us. I look forward to doing that. Great.
You are amazing. Do you have a new logo, Dr. Danzinger,
Oh,
for
yes,
your
I
business?
do.
Can we
Yeah,
get that?
so
And I'll email you. You don't have to remember.
I'll be happy to provide that logo.
Hi, the Way to My Heart Incorporated.
Here we are. If everyone can please mute.
Welcome to the Heart of Innovation.
Except
60
for Dr.
minutes that can
Danzinger.
save life and limb with new breakthrough ideas and innovation changing the healthcare landscape. Brought to you by patient advocacy group thewaytomyheart.org in partnership with Abbott. Here are your hosts for the Heart of Innovation, Emmy Award-winning journalist and founder of The Way to My Heart, Kim McNicholas, and interventional cardiologist and founder of the Save My Piggies Health Education Series, Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. We have a really big topic today. It is probably the number one question we get asked from patients around the world. It's how do we reverse type 2 diabetes? It is a true epidemic and continuing to get worse, not only in the United States, but around the world, and we've got to do something about it. The American Diabetes Association reports that every 1 in 2 U.S. adults have either pre-diabetes or diabetes, and that is truly concerning because the complications from diabetes are actually really awful, including peripheral artery disease. You have blindness. I mean, so much can happen with too much sugar in your blood. So we have Dr. Michael Dansinger, who's going to be joining us. He wrote the amazing Tufts University Diabetes reversal program. He has a brand new program in Massachusetts that we're going to talk about, maybe even talk to a patient who is in that program and her struggles as well as her successes through the program and with diabetes overall and its complications. So we have a really good show ahead. Lots of people writing in and even jumping on the call already with questions for Dr. Dansinger. So Dr. John Phillips, I think it's full speed ahead.
Dr. John Phillips, spectacular vascular moment of inspiration.
Yes, Dr. Phillips always has those moments of inspiration, but I have a feeling that we lost him. So I am going to turn to Dr. Dansinger for maybe your favorite, most inspirational quote that guides you through your life and your career. Inspire us. Inspire us.
Kim, it's great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to a great conversation today. And so I'm going to quote. My favorite quote today is, "Stop your yapping and make it happen."
I love it. I love it. We're all about what is tangible? What can we do? And how do we just get her done? As Yoda says, there's no try, it's just do. And I
We
know
have a
I
lot.
botched it, but
Yeah, we have a lot to say today, and we're going to do a lot of talking and sharing ideas, and I'm excited to answer questions. But in the end, you can talk and talk and talk and talk, but nothing
yes.
happens with our health until we actually make changes and do the hard work. And
Why
so
is
that's what that's
diabetes
all
so
about.
difficult? Why is diabetes so difficult? It's so difficult to do. It's difficult for people to even wrap their heads around the dietary changes they have to make. I mean, where did this all come from? Why do we have such an epidemic? I hear some that tell me it's because of this low fat craze and there was a replacement with sugar. Calories are better than fats. Then I've heard, I'm reading this book called The Salt Fix, and how this focus on or over focus on reducing salt has led to the addition of sugars being put into people's diets. What is your assessment of the current diabetes craze? Why is
Yeah,
this happening?
Kim, it's a great point. Many of us either have diabetes or prediabetes, or our lives have been touched by family members who have that. Most of us know people who have diabetes. It's all around us. It's a huge epidemic in the United States and throughout the world, and it seems to be getting worse and worse. So, the underlying cause of diabetes is both simple and complex. I'm going to point my finger at the processed food that fills our grocery stores and our restaurants and our, takeout places. And the American diet has changed so much over the past 50 years. And if you just compare what you might see on grocery store shelves today versus what you can imagine it was like 50 or 100 years ago, that's my number one. That's the number one culprit, is the changes in the types of food that people are eating. And it's just reached a point that the food is so distorted from what we're designed to actually
Mhm.
eat, that that's the main cause of obesity and heart disease and type 2 diabetes. It's the food. But it's not
And
just the food, but that's the number one culprit right there.
And I'm going to open up a can of worms here because I was just I also, in my side hustle, I'm still a journalist and I'm working with companies out of Tokyo to learn more about them. They want to infiltrate the U.S. market, and one of the companies that I'm talking to and learning more about and helping to write their profile is one in which they're focusing on gene sequencing and, like, our overall microbiome, the microbes, evolving those, extracting the enzymes, the proteins, and using them to create a new generation of food as one of their things. I am wondering what your thought is, on our current health, where we're at with all of this processed foods that we're eating now, and where you think this is going. Are we going to have even more chronic illness with food being supposedly manufactured versus really going back to nature and how we were designed as hunters and gatherers?
That's a great question, Kim. So the key to preventing and reversing diabetes, I think, starts with the food, and the technology is not going to save us here. So fruits and vegetables and healthy proteins and one ingredient foods are always going to be the way to go. And we can continue to make advances in technology, and we can make different types of apples, and find ways to have delicious strawberries all year round, and we can get better and better at providing healthy food. And that's the role for technologies, making it easier to eat one ingredient foods and getting better and better at making recipes that have clean ingredients. So all of these manufactured foods that are highly complicated and have supposed health benefits, I'm not
And
going to
grown
bet our
in a
future
lab.
on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm always, when people come to me and ask me and say, hey, I have this, and I'm going to say these manufactured burgers in a lab, anything grown in a lab. That is always a question. Always the safe bet is going back to natural. And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we're going to have more with Dr. Michael Dansinger and learn more about how to reverse diabetes 2 coming up. So stay with us.
Leg health.
Everybody's clear.
Thank you. Where is Dr. Phillips?
I'm here. Do you see me?
Okay,
We see you.
see you.
I was having some technical issues, so I'm on my phone.
No
But
worries. We'll
I
let
can
you.
see.
Do you want to take it back in and say, hey, I'm here? Some
I
technical
made it.
snafus.
I made it. Yes.
Dr.
Yes.
Dansinger took over your moment of inspiration. Stop
Don't worry,
yapping
I
and
still
make it
have one.
happen.
I've got one. I'm good. I'm good.
Did you hear his?
I caught the tail end about the gist of it was just, but maybe like shut up and get it done, something like
My
that.
inspirational quote was stop your
Stop
yapping and make
talking.
it happen.
Stop
There
your
you go.
yapping and
I
make it
love it.
happen.
I
Perfect
like
for a
that, Michael.
radio
That's good
show?
stuff.
Maybe not.
Oh no, that's perfect for a radio show. Come on now. We still gotta get it happening.
And that's the whole point. Yeah, Dr. Danziger, I was reading what they're planning to do, and I just see such a big push in biotech to manufacture food, more foods in the lab, and I just get concerned because they really think that growing something from a small, enzyme or microbe, while it's great, it can degrade plastic and great, let's solve climate change, right? But to manufacture food really still bothers me because if you think about it,
Sorry to
the
interrupt. Heads
original
up, 7 up. We
banana,
got about 15 seconds till we air.
the really small ones were supposedly healthy, but now we have these really large, bright yellow bananas that have way too much sugar. And that's usually the example I use.
329-2077. 800-329-2077. This is 860 AM. The Answer.
Okay, John, take it back in.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I apologize for being a little bit late. I was having some technical difficulties. My computer is so bloody old that I feel like I'm using a dial-up modem here. So I'm back and better than ever, and happy to be I'm happy to be joining the crew. So real quick, if you can just indulge me for a second here. I had an inspirational quote because I know Michael had one, but I like this one. This is from E.E. Cummings. It takes courage to grow up and become who you really are. And I think we're always trying to define ourselves and kind of evolve. And part of our evolution is eating properly. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And then the other thing is I love history. And so I was looking into who actually helped us figure out the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, which Dr. Dansinger is probably going to get into. But basically, it's the difference between being kind of insulin sensitive and then insulin insensitive. But it was a physician by the name of Harold Himsworth in 1936 out of the UK. So back in, so we're going on 90 plus years of knowing about type 1 and type 2 diabetes. But yet in the US, if you look at the CDC database, approximately 98 million American adults, so that's about 1 in 3 are pre-diabetic. And the problem with it, and Michael, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because, we're going to talk about potentially stopping this or trying to stop it, but 80% of those people don't even know they have it. And that's crazy to me, absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, prediabetes is an emergency. It's an emergency in this country, and it's an emergency in many places around the world. And imagine your house is on fire, but the fire is small and it's just, on the burner, and you can recognize it and you can put it out and you can put that fire out before it's too late. But if you don't know it's happening, or if you know it's happening and you ignore it, the whole house is going to catch on fire. So that's an analogy to say that if there's a little fire on your stove, that's a potential emergency. We don't ignore that stuff, but here we are in America and our stove is on fire and we're ignoring it.
And that's the big question, because I know even with my dad, when he was diagnosed with prediabetes, they did send him home with the finger sticks and had him track it for a few weeks. But then they said, okay, well, you're fine. It's consistently prediabetes, no problem. And they just brushed him off and sent him out the door. And I do see this a lot with a lot of our patients that we work with, that I say, are you diabetic? They said no. And I said, are you pre-diabetic? Oh, yeah, well, my doctor says I'm pre-diabetic, but it's not a problem. That's a problem, don't you think?
It's like a fireman saying your stove's on fire, but it's not a problem until the whole house is on fire.
Exactly.
You know, the interesting thing, because I hear that as well. In fact, I was doing a procedure on a patient, was asking him if he was diabetic. He said, well, I'm pre-diabetic. And I don't know if people really know what that means, because for me, well, if we're going to use the fire analogy, I would say that's, you know, the smoke alarm going off and you're trying to air out the house a little bit. And so I'm doing things to open up the vents and open up the windows and to get the smoke alarm to turn off. But I don't know that people are doing that, because for me, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way you curb this is to exercise and eat right. And yet a lot of people don't do that.
Exactly. So type 2 diabetes always starts as prediabetes, which then worsens. And prediabetes is happening when the body is not using insulin, the hormone insulin, properly. The body's not making enough insulin and it's not using it properly. And that comes after many, many years of warning signs. Most people who develop prediabetes have plenty of weight to lose. And if they can lose that weight by making lifestyle changes, it can reverse the prediabetes before it escalates to type 2 diabetes.
Because, you know, Michael, the other issue too is when it gets to type 2 diabetes, then you're going to start taking some medications, and we're probably going to touch on some of the medications that are out there now, some of the newer ones that, you know, have been implicated not only to help with diabetes, but weight loss, and then have some cardiovascular benefits, the GLP-1s agonists, the Ozempics and Wegovy's of the world. But, you know, these folks ultimately then get on, you know, when you fail the meds, then you put on insulin. And if I remember correctly from my internal medicine days, it's really hard to get off insulin. Like once you're on it, you're kind of on it for the duration, which then starts that cascade of other, you know, ailments, mainly cardiovascular disease.
Yeah, exactly right. It's never too late to start turning around your diabetes, no matter how advanced it is. But of course, you want to try to reverse it as soon as, you know, the earlier, the better. And so there is a point that it continues to worsen and worsen over the course of many years. And it's much harder to improve it when it's been around for a decade or more.
So tell us a little bit about your strategy for, I guess, tackling this epidemic, because if truly a third of all Americans have prediabetes, this is not getting any better anytime soon. And if they're going to morph into a true type 2 diabetic, you know, we're looking at not only the cost to the patient itself, both lifestyle, you know, and just health quality years, but financially to the patient, but also, you know, the country as a whole.
Absolutely. So I used to be a primary care internal medicine doctor, but 20 years ago, I decided I'd like to just focus entirely on disease prevention and reversal. And I stopped prescribing drugs. And I believe in drugs, but I believe that people want to be on the least amount of medication possible. And if people can avoid medication by using lifestyle to treat diabetes, obesity, heart disease, etc., that's the number one treatment. But not enough doctors and healthcare providers are helping people do that. And so that's what I focused on for the past 20 years. And I have found over the years that in order for the healthcare providers to provide the support that patients need, you have to see the patient much more often than every 6 months or a year or even every 3 months. It's just not enough. People need much more support than they're getting, in my opinion. And so I have been seeing patients every week at first until we have a good strategy that's producing weight loss. And as the scale moves in their favor, the blood sugar moves in their favor, and the hemoglobin A1C, which measures the average blood sugar, is improving. And we just keep the momentum going. And so we need a good eating strategy. And I need to see what people are eating. I ask people to log their food and show me pictures of what they're eating. And by providing this level of intense coaching, that is how I have found that as a doctor, I can truly help people to lose weight and improve their health and reverse their diabetes and prediabetes.
But it's really that consistency, right? It's that love and attention and accountability that is consistent.
Absolutely. Most doctors are just not in a position to provide, weekly, level of support or even monthly. But there are a lot of dietitians out there who would love to do that sort of thing. There are a lot of personal trainers. There are a lot of ways that a person can create accountability and weekly support. And it's a shame that more doctors aren't in a position to do that. But however you get that support, putting yourself in the position of accountability, structure, and encouragement goes a very long way.
So many different healthcare systems don't have the ability, they don't have the resources. They have, for example, here with my dad and his dietitian, he was offered one appointment and then he couldn't go back to see that dietitian because she's so tapped with so many patients for 3 months. And so she fills out a template, right? Checks those boxes of the things that he needs to make changes on. And then come back in 3 months and we'll see how you're doing. And that is not effective. How do we scale what you are doing so it becomes consistent and also democratize access for those patients that don't have anything else but, let's say, Medicare or Medicaid as their
You will
insurance?
find out the answer more here on the Heart of Innovation with Dr. Kim McNichols and Dr. John Phillips. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Three years ago, my symptoms.
I love it. I got a new degree.
Y'all are clear.
I was gonna say, Kim, are you that's awesome. You just got knighted.
I got the honorary doctorate, and I'm going to take that
And
from
run.
producer Colin. Thank you.
No problem. I was like, I'm like, screw it. She's a doctor now. Go.
Just go with it. Just go with it. But to clarify, I'm not a doctor.
Kim, are we going to be able to get Cricket to join, do you think?
That's what I'm working on right now. I was looking, I just sent her the thing. She asked about audio, that she couldn't get her audio up, but I don't even see her on video. So I just sent her the link again, and I'm hoping, for that.
Is Cricket a patient, Michael?
Yeah, that Kim referred to me.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, so I think coming out of the break, Michael, I'd like to ask you about, realistically, how, and I think you touched on it, how would you implement what you're doing? Because it sounds a bit boutique-ish to me. And yesterday I saw 14 patients between 7:40 and 11:40. And, half the time I'm spending in front of a computer, dictating and trying to get orders in and things like that. So in the real world, as opposed to an ideal situation, how do what you're doing, how does that translate, I guess?
Hey, Colin, can you type in the phone number, please?
Yeah, I'll be happy to discuss that during the next segment. I have some thoughts about how to make that real.
Colin, how much time do we have?
Colin, can I get the phone number, please?
Yes. I'm here.
Colin, please tell me the phone number, please.
For the station right now, it is 888-367-5329.
Okay, Cricket's going to call in to the main number.
That's fine. Also, heads up, everybody, we got about a minute till we air.
When she's on, just let us know, and we can call her in at any time that you are ready. Dr. Dansinger, you can, once we know that she's on, you're welcome to throw to her as well to bring her in.
Okay, great. Kim, I think you'll be in the best position to sort of bring Cricket in, but
I can.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that. Dr. Phillips, you want to take us back in since I kind of lost the end of the my discussion with I got a little.
Well, I mean, you were flustered because you're a physician now, so you just
Yeah, I
wrap your head
know.
around that.
I don't even know what to say.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd more than
Heads up,
wanna-
everybody. 20 seconds till we air. She's also on line one, so when you're ready, I can just let her in.
Dr. Danziger, are you ready for her, or do you want to do a little bit more first?
You know, I think it'd be really helpful if I explain my model, and then you can bring Cricket in to share how it works from the patient perspective.
All right,
Awesome.
everyone, 5 seconds.
Dr. Phillips, you want to get into the model?
860 AM. The Answer.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. Happy Saturday. So, Michael, before we went to break and during the break, you were describing your kind of model with respect to taking care of patients and focusing on coaching them, supporting them, less meds versus, more meds, seeing them on a really frequent cadence of once a week. And so in my mind, I thought, awesome, I'd love to be able to do that. But yesterday I was saying I saw 14 patients in about a 4-hour period, which is reasonably busy. But I don't have time to see folks and spend a lot of time with them, nor can I see them on a weekly basis. And I feel like what we do, and I'm as guilty as the next person, it's kind of pass the buck a little bit. And I put my interventional blinders on a lot of times, and I deal with the heart and the legs. And then,
Whoops, you're breaking up just a little bit. So I think what he's trying to say is he has.
Well, let me explain how I do it. So if I told a doctor that I see the same patient every week for 3 months, and then every other week thereafter, they would say, that's crazy. How can you do that? But I do it and I bill it to the insurance, and I've never had the insurance say, you can't do that. And in fact, the standard of care for intensive lifestyle coaching for type 2 diabetes is to see the patients at least 16 times in the first 6 months, and then have frequent visits thereafter. And so the standard of care by the American Diabetes Association embraces very frequent visits as the number one primary treatment for type 2 diabetes. So what I'm doing by seeing patients every week or two is in line with the state of the art. Now, imagine as a doctor setting aside a half day a week, 4 hours a week, just to see patients frequently. And so you can pick a patient and say, let's find a time on Tuesday afternoons that we can meet by video, telehealth, for 20 minutes each week. And we're going to talk about what's working and what's not working. And week by week, we're just going to get better at our system. And I'm going to see the patient for the 20 minutes, and I'm going to bill it to the insurance as a visit for diabetes or heart disease or peripheral artery disease, and the insurance is going to pay me. And I bill according to the amount of time spent. So the more time I spend with the patient, the more I'm paid, and it all works out to the same amount of dollars per hour, and I can make a living, as good a living as I made in primary care. And any doctor who's in primary care has the freedom to do what I'm doing. They just don't know that they could do it. And maybe they're too busy, but there's lots of nurse practitioners and physician assistants who would be ideal for this kind of work. And in fact, in the next year ahead, I plan to train up about a dozen or so nurse practitioners and physician assistants in my method so that they can learn how to do this model, which I've been
Now,
doing for 15 years.
but you're not a dietitian. So do you need to have a dietitian or certified nutritionist in order to have the specific recommendations that are well recognized? How do you go about making up this program and making the recommendations for patients on their diet?
Well, that's a good point, Kim. So I did complete a 3-year nutrition fellowship at Tufts
Gotcha.
Medical School. However, most primary care doctors have a good enough and nurse practitioners and physician assistants have enough knowledge to start, right? All
Right.
you need is a responsible eating plan, and you and the patient agree on a plan, and the patient's going to check their weight every week and log their food. And as long as you're providing encouragement and sensible basic nutritional advice, that's enough to start. Now, with many years of experience, I'm well versed in, a wide range of different eating strategies, and I know what to say to different patients to keep them motivated. And every person is different, and you have to be a dietitian and a psychologist, and but you don't need to be. You don't need 20 years of experience in nutrition to do it.
Right.
So
When it comes to that secret sauce, though, how much of the success in your program has to do with the setup of your program and the nutritional offerings, right? The education you provide versus the customization of that information with the psychology aspect and the different diet strategies based on what you discover about this particular human. And on top of that, the love and attention and time. Which one do you think, tips it over to create success?
That's a great question. I would say it's 90% the structure and 10% the customization.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
what I'm saying here is the formula for coaching is number one, frequent visits, especially by video. Number
Right.
two, having a responsible eating strategy. And number three, the food logging. And almost no healthcare provider is doing that. But when you provide those three things simultaneously, that's 90% of what you need to do. The rest is just being nice and encouraging and giving sensible advice.
So,
And I want to
Michael,
bring in, go ahead,
sorry,
and
I
then I'm
know,
going
I
to
know
bring
we're going
in
to
one
get
of
to.
the patients.
Yep, I know real quick, but I wanted to, because I think this dovetails into it, Michael. Is there a selection bias with the type of patient that you get? Meaning, are they more motivated than others to actually get this done?
Oh, yes. What I'm asking for, right? Meet with me for 20 minutes by video once a week and, follow an eating plan and log your food. Most people aren't up for that level of work, but doesn't that sound better than taking insulin shots or pills? If it can prevent and reverse your diabetes, I would say that even though I'm asking a lot, it's the lesser of the evils compared to what's in store for you if you don't.
And what is the retention rate for your program
Yeah,
with these patients?
that's a great question. And honestly, so there is a lot of selection bias, right? Many people consider whether they want to do this before they decide to dive in. And once they dive in, neither they nor I know with any certainty whether they're going to rise to the occasion. But I would say 50% of my patients who stick 50% of patients who meet with me once stick with me for at least 3 months. In other
Oh,
words, I
wow.
do lose half the people within the first 3 months. However, if they stick with me for at least 3 months, these people on average reduce their hemoglobin A1C by 1.5 percentage points, and they lose on average 10% of their body weight. And so I never know at that first visit whether this person is going to go all the way. And I know on average about half of them will. And those half get great results.
Coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation. It's great. We've learned about the model for Dr. Dansinger's program. Now we're going to meet one of his patients and find out her successes and struggles. So stay with us right here on the Heart of Innovation.
Everyone's clear on that side.
Fantastic. This is interesting. And Dr.
That is
Dansinger,
awesome.
do you have time to stick around for about 15 minutes to answer patient questions?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good. If everyone, we're going to get to cricket because I'm not sure, we only have 15 minutes left. We have a 10-minute and then we have a 5-minute. But we're going to get to people's questions. So get them ready. Make sure that, we can start right as soon as this main show is over. We're going to continue going live on YouTube and the social networks so that we can get to more specific questions that all of you might have. And I know that
Michael,
I've seen quite a few.
Question for you. So it sounds like a lot of what you're doing is telehealth.
Yeah.
Do you have to get state? So how does that work across state lines? Or are you just
You need a license where the patient lives. And so right now I'm licensed in 2 states, Massachusetts and Florida. So all my patients live in one of those 2 states. I can be anywhere.
Gotcha.
I can be anywhere in the US, but they have to be in their homes in the state where I have a license.
And so you are accepting patients out of Florida too?
Yeah, just those states for now.
Okay, perfect. Because I know we have quite a few patients that are in Florida that all they have to do, what do they have to do to get to
you know what though? In Florida, I'm only taking Medicare patients. Patients who
fine.
have US government Medicare.
That's fine. And at some point, Douglas, he is going to try for Texas as well. Just not yet.
Heads up, 7 up, 15 seconds till we air.
Okay. Do you want me to take us back in, or John, do you want to say a few more things before?
Yeah. Go. No, go ahead. Let's get cricket on.
Okay.
We've only got 10-5 or so.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear her story.
Me too.
SRN News. 8:60 a.m. The Answer.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone. We are in our Save My Piggies portion of our program, and we are talking to Dr. Michael Dansinger, who has an impactful diabetes type 2 reversal program in Massachusetts. It's also available in Florida for Medicare patients. I think for more patients in Massachusetts at this point on different insurance, but at least in Florida, just Medicare. But it is an offering. We do have Cricket, who is on the line. She is one of Dr. Michael Dansinger's patients, and she had come to the Global PAD Association, which is my nonprofit that helps people that have a complication of diabetes, which is called peripheral artery disease, that plaque buildup that, clogs up those arteries and mainly the legs. And diabetes is a factor because even one sugar molecule can scratch those arteries, leading to that plaque buildup. So Cricket is here. Cricket was struggling, right, Cricket, for a while with your peripheral artery disease. That was accelerating. And one of the driving factors was your type 2 diabetes, correct?
Yes, Kim, exactly. Hi, everybody. I was diagnosed mid 2017. I had multiple procedures because of it. A few bypasses in my leg, an abdominal aortic to stem bypass. I've been in and out of the hospital quite a few times. I've been working with Dr. Dansinger for a few months now.
Really? And so what was the catalyst? I mean, I think before we get to the catalyst of going with Dr. Michael Dansinger, you knew you had type 2 diabetes. And I'm curious, what was the treatment for you? How did your doctors talk to you about it? And what was offered to you that didn't seem to quite work for you?
I was put on a few different medications, tried a few different ones. Some worked, some didn't work. Mostly with myself being accountable. I just wasn't accountable for anything. I knew what I was supposed to eat, what I'm not supposed to eat, and I still chose to eat poorly.
I appreciate your honesty. And so what was the catalyst to finally say, you know what? I'm ready for some accountability and I'm ready for Dr. Michael Dansinger's program.
Well, I've always wanted the accountability, but being in Dr. Dansinger's program, he also helps hold me accountable. Like you said, his program, I speak to him every week. We meet for 20 minutes every Wednesday through video chat, and he helps keep me accountable. He helps motivate me, and he doesn't get discouraged when I tell him, listen, I've had a crap week. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. He says, that's okay. Everybody's human, and just go forward from here.
Well, Dr. Dansinger, that is a good question. Everyone has, and I hear it all the time. You know what? I just had a bad week. That's my excuse for falling off the wagon. And your approach to saying, okay, is what it is. You're human. Let's just keep moving forward. That's a really good start that you are here. Let's try this again. And that seems to be a really successful approach, at least with cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a coach, you need the right balance. You need to provide encouragement and accountability, and you can't push too hard, but you can't be too much of a pushover either. And every person responds differently. And so what I'll often say is when I hear that someone just didn't make any forward progress on a particular week, is I'll acknowledge, some weeks are for progress and other weeks are for maintenance. And does a good teacher kick out the students who aren't getting an A? No, they help the C students become a B student, and a B student become an A student, and even the F student become a D student. And so it's through encouragement and staying positive, and by having good concrete advice when needed, that almost anyone can improve.
Cricket, can you provide an example of one of your visits that Dr. Dansinger provided to you that kind of really stuck with you, and ultimately you said, okay, I'm going to create an action plan, I'm going to get this done?
I want to say it was probably, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe our third visit. I think after our second visit, I had called it quits. I was just getting frustrated with myself. I wasn't working the program the way I was supposed to be. I had one more visit with him. I think it was set up by Kim to this and give it one more chance. So I did one last visit with Dr. Dansinger and said, okay, listen, I'm going to give this one more try. I wanted it to work. How badly I wanted it to work depended on me. And I dug my feet in and I stuck to the program. I'm not going to say 100%, but maybe about 90%. And I started seeing results. Not so much with the weight loss, but with my my numbers every day, my A1C eventually. Yeah, so it does work if you want to stick with it. And that's, I had to make the decision that I'm going to do this.
You bring up a really good point about that fear of failure that leads to non-compliance, right? Fear of disappointing the doctor, knowing what you're supposed to be doing, not doing it, and then fearing going to that appointment and owning up to it. That took a lot of courage, Cricket.
Oh, absolutely. And I told my husband the other day, because we had our phone appointment on Wednesday. I was actually in the car when we had the video chat. And my husband was in the car with me. And after the video chat, my husband said, oh, you were really honest with him. I'm like, well, I can lie to them and tell them, yeah, I'm doing great. What good is that going to do me? I have to own up to my faults and be honest with myself. If I can't be honest with myself, the program's not going to do me any good.
I think that's really interesting. Sorry to interrupt, Kim, because it takes a while for the patient to trust the physician, and the latter, the physician to trust the patient. And I was just thinking about how many times I tell a patient, I've got one guy I've been seeing for years, and every year I say, "Are you going to quit smoking? Are you going to quit smoking?" And he's like, yeah. He never does. But I don't see him frequently enough. And I was wondering, if I really got after this guy on a weekly basis, would he quit? Maybe, probably more likely to.
Yeah, Dr. Dansinger, what do you think? I mean, that you have been saying is really the key. It's that consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. I also said at the very beginning, right, there's a lot of talk, but if we're not seeing actual results, if we're not seeing improvement in the blood sugar and the hemoglobin A1C, then all the conversations are one thing, but I want to see real results. And Cricket, would you be willing to share the improvement in your hemoglobin A1C? If you don't want to say, you don't have to, but I just would love it if you recall the extent of the results of your effort, even though it wasn't perfect and some weeks there was no progress. The end result in your hemoglobin A1C tells a very important story, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. I want to say my most recent A1C had been done back in October. That was an 11.1. I started working with you in January,
right?
December or January. My next appointment with my from blood work, I had my A1C done was the early part of March, and it came back at a 6.4.
Oh, that is drastic. Is that typical? I mean,
is that on any medication?
That's better than average. So I said, so Cricket's A1C went from like 11 to 6.5, and in 6 months, and she cut way back on starch and sugar and unhealthy foods, and some weight was coming off, and I think your insulin was less. Than when we start, and that is a much better result than I typically see. I usually, on average, for people who stick with me 3 months, they get 1.5 units, which is from 7.5 down to from 8 down to 6.5. Let's say 1.5 units. That's pretty good.
So that translates to what, about 45 sugar point? The absolute value or so, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty good.
When people work with me, I can practically guarantee that their A1C is going to go down, but I don't know how much. And I know they're going to lose weight, but I don't know how much. And I know that
Doctor, I hate to cut in, but we have to go to commercial break here on the Heart of Innovation on KTRB 860 AM The Answer.
Are you tired of exposing your retirement to stock market risk?
Good timing on that,
to participate in credited interest from market index returns?
Okay, we have 1 minute and then we're back in.
Brown for the Safe Money Radio Show on Sunday at 10 a.m. on 860 AM The Answer. You can also call Edmund Brown now for your complimentary customized Safe Money Radio kit and Safe Money Radio.
My fault.
John, do you want to take us back in for the Save My Piggies episode, and then let Dr. finish? But I'm also curious from Cricket, and if you feel comfortable, Dr. Phillips, and what you think. But I would love to hear how this drop in both A1C and weight loss has had
Heads up, 7 up, 10 seconds to here.
Is she feeling better? Is she able to move more?
Of broadcasters.
This is 860 AM The Answer.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. So we only have about 5 minutes left. So I think this has been a fantastic show because we've not only learned
We are having trouble hearing you, Dr. Phillips.
That can help people who are diabetic and pre-diabetic and who lower their A1. Can you hear me now? Sorry.
We can hear you now, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. So real quick, Michael, some final thoughts with us regarding your program and what are some of the next steps, and then we'll hear from Cricket to wrap up the show.
So final thoughts is we live in our house is on fire. In the United States, our house is on fire. Some of us, it's just the stove. Some of us are just at risk for the stove starting on fire. But this country has way too many houses on fire. And what I think the healthcare system in the United States is broken. And this is a symptom. And so we need, here I discuss an innovative model, right? Cricket's getting weekly visits with me. I bill the insurance. She pays nothing. I make a good living. Everyone wins when we open our minds to the way that when we follow the advice of the American Diabetes Association to provide intensive one-on-one lifestyle coaching to the patients, all we need to do is follow through with the guidance. And it's the healthcare providers and the healthcare system that has the opportunity and the responsibility to overcome the barriers and make it happen. Those are my thoughts.
And for Cricket, your quick, thoughts, your A1C went down, you've lost some weight. How is that translated into how you feel with all of your vascular issues and being able to get more energy and to move more?
Like I told Dr. Dansinger, I was tired all the time. Like I couldn't get out of my own way. I just wanted to sleep. Now I have so much more energy. I'm not tired all the time. I'm out doing more. Not only did my A1C go down, I stopped taking insulin. I was on 40 units a day, and I have stopped having to take insulin. I still take Invokana and glipizide, but no more insulin. And my vascular issues, they're still there. A lot of mine are hereditary, so they'll never go away, but they're not as bad as they were.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Congratulations on all of your success. We got to hit the road. Appreciate your time, Cricket, for sharing your story and your courage and your honesty. And Dr. Michael Dansinger, thank you so much for your time. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Everyone's clear outside. I'm just playing it out.
Okay, thanks so much. Sorry, John, I cut you. I just didn't know if your audio was going to work for that last second, so I just cut right in.
All good.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
But
Great show.
We have so many different, can you stick around for a few minutes? Get some other real, good questions in here, that patients have that we're really excited. I know that Douglas wanted to jump in with a question. Douglas, go ahead and ask your question, and then we're going to go one by one with folks.
So I kind of want to start at the beginning. So if I've been diagnosed pre-diabetes. So where do I start? Where would I begin in that change? And because I struggle with what she says, I do good for a while, and then every now and then I relapse in my eating. So where do I begin to make those effective changes in my lifestyle?
Yeah, if you have weight to lose, it's not easy to lose it, but that's the best thing you can do to prevent pre-diabetes from escalating into type 2 diabetes. And it's mainly the food. And it's hard to cut back on all the starch that is in most people's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but that's the first place to start, is recognize the starch and the sugar as being the kryptonite to your Superman, and figure out how to make it a special occasion food rather than something eaten daily. That would be my general advice for most people. It's an oversimplification, I understand.
If I was to get somebody to help me, is there a specific person that I should look at to help me figure out all of that?
I'd love to hear ideas from other folks, because there's a shortage of people who can provide that.
There are. And Dr. Michael Dansinger was so generous with his time in the past year and has actually shared a lot of his amazing expertise in our book called Food for Thought, which is free online. We do have a link that we can put here in the chat. We can put it on YouTube as well. But also it's available on Amazon if you search peripheral artery disease. A lot of his expertise and guidance and education is in that book that he dedicated so much time to doing. Across the board, we tell people to go ahead and ask your primary care physician for a referral to a dietitian. If a dietitian is not available readily, then they do have a nutritionist and get into a program with that nutritionist. Many HMO or general healthcare systems do have regular educational programs and seminars, even just virtually, that you can attend on a weekly basis, especially for diabetes. And so you can ask about that. But a lot of primary care physicians don't think, right away when they say, hey, you have, diabetes, you're pre-diabetic, to actually offer those resources. So it's up to the patients to advocate for themselves and ask that question. What resources are available for me to help me start improving my diet and getting the guidance I need? Do you have, seminars here? Is there an educational person or resource here within our hospital system or clinic? You also need to give a call to your insurance company, because insurance companies also know of the resources that are specific to that insurance company that they may provide.
I would also say that it behooves the insurance company to get you healthy and keep you healthy, because your premiums are down, you're, quote, less of a risk to them. But I also worry that, like this, there's all these little boutique type medicine practices popping up, at least in Columbus, and I imagine in Massachusetts too. And so a lot of this favors those that have the disposable income to go reach out and pay a dietitian to take care of them, or pay out of pocket. But a lot of my patients don't have the ability to use or to have. They don't have resources such as that. So it is a struggle for folks that are financially a little bit tighter than others.
A good point. I'll also point out that about 20% of my patients are Medicaid, and most of them are middle income to lower income. And money always helps provide resources, but it doesn't have to. This country cannot afford to let those who need the most help financially behind. And there are, I think, searching online for diabetes prevention program near me is probably a good place to start.
And I know that there's an organization called Virta Health, and they have, for other states that you're not in, there are some insurance companies that work with them in particular, and you need to ask your insurance company if they're supportive of the Virta Health program, which is also virtual. I do want to ask a question just following up, and then I'll get to more questions. But, if you, Douglas was mentioning, how it's tough to stick to that diet. But if you cheat, are there any sort of parameters for cheating? Are there rules to having a little cheatery in that general diet? I know that Marcia is going to get to a question that she has, and she has had, been asking at some point, like, can I just have that one pizza? Or Douglas and his one Dr. Pepper Slurpee from Buc-ee's. Are there rules that allow for a little cheating once in a while?
Yes, absolutely. So in my experience, it's very important to have an eating strategy with clear rules. But I would say all of my eating strategies say eat this, but not that. But you only have to be A- or B+ strictness. So 90% strict gets pretty good results, and not everyone can do that. Some people can only be 80% strict, but I never, as a coach, look for 100% perfection because nobody's perfect. And the goal with treats is not like with smoking where the goal is 0, or with alcoholism, the goal is to not drink today. With treats, you can't be so all or none, black or white. So I would say there's this gray area, and aiming for 90% strict is what I would usually do with a patient.
Marcia, do you want to ask your question? Go ahead and unmute.
Well, thanks for being here. This topic is very interesting to me. I was just looking at my test results online, and instead of A1C, they're doing EAG. So estimated average glucose.
Yes.
Okay, so I went up from February to April. I went up from 117 to 123, and I eat clean. I mean, I've lost weight, I've quit smoking, and I exercise like crazy. My glucose went down from 114 to 102, but it's still high. And I don't know what to do. Is the two things that I do in my diet is intermittent fasting. So I usually only eat mostly in the evening, and I do like red wine. So those are my questions, I guess. What can I do?
Right. Is it fair to say you don't have any weight to lose?
People are telling me lately I'm too thin. I mean, I can tell you what I weigh. I don't know what the body mass index is, but I weigh 130. I'm 65 almost, and I'm about almost under 5'4".
Yeah. So even though the vast majority of people with type 2 diabetes or prediabetes have weight to lose, 10 to 15% do not. And that makes it much more, first of all, it's puzzling. And secondly, it's much more difficult to reverse that. And so I hear your pain, and there's still there's definitely a genetic component that's raising, risk there. And we can't change our genetics, but we can all do the best we can with what we've got. And so if a person is eating clean and exercising, and I would say a person, can get as close to 7 hours a week of exercise, which is ambitious, but we should all be trying to get as close to 7 hours a week of exercise as possible. We should all try to be 90% strict with our eating, regardless of whether our state of health. And that's all one can do. And so
is intermittent fasting, is that a bad thing? Does it affect your sugar?
So intermittent fasting, we still have a lot to learn about that, but I will tell you, when in research studies that take a certain amount of calories, let's say 2,000 calories, and they divide those calories up in different ways, spread out evenly versus, lumping them all into, a window of eating. Those studies generally show. So if you're looking to lose weight or lower your hemoglobin A1C, I don't think there's that much to be gained by taking the same amount of calories and spreading them out differently. However, you can make little gains by actually spreading out your calories evenly. But more importantly is that when you stop eating, when you close the kitchen at 8 p.m., or when you say, I'm just going to have 2 meals a day instead of 3, or, when you find ways to limit your eating to certain times, that prevents you from eating more calories, and that can lead to weight loss. And so to me, the main advantage of intermittent fasting is it basically closes the kitchen during a certain time of day, and
that's why I do
causes
it.
you to not eat, because we all eat for pleasure, not just because we're hungry.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And
Red
we
wine,
have a
can you ask about alcohol just real quick?
yes.
I think well, opinions differ, but I think alcohol is counterproductive for the most part, especially for people who are trying to lose weight, because it has calories and because it's disinhibiting. I would also say that research for many years has suggested that alcohol can maybe help clean the arteries, and maybe there was something in the skin of the red grape and wine or something like that. But I think that research has become less straightforward, and that there's enough contradictory research to say maybe wine or alcohol does not cause any health benefit. And so I think we need more data, but for the most part, I don't think there's much to be gained by drinking alcohol.
If it is,
yeah.
Go ahead.
You
it's
definitely find experts who would say, no, a glass of wine a day is good for you, but I would disagree with those people.
For my dad, it was interesting because with the way his dietitian approached his situation, her first question to him was, what is your number one non-negotiable? If I can change everything else in your diet, which I'm going to, what is that one non-negotiable that I am not allowed to change? And I will give you that one, and we will then figure out a workaround with it. And so his number one was he has to have his one little martini every night. It's been a thing with him. He doesn't drink a lot, but he just has his one martini with 2 olives and an onion every night. And she said, okay, you can have that. But along with that, you need to have a protein. So I want you to have a handful of nuts or 2 handfuls of nuts that is paired with that alcohol. Or you're going to have some smoked salmon that is paired with that alcohol, so that she claims that it balances out the sugars somewhat, somehow. But everything else in his life, he had to change.
Great point.
So how much, do you have those situations? Do you have any funny stories in terms of, non-negotiables with people where you're like, okay, boy, oh boy, I have to work around that. Oh, Lord.
I will tell you a story. So there was a time when a patient was not able to have her morning coffee because she was fasting for a blood draw, and she went crazy. She did have some psychiatric problems, but without that morning cup of coffee, she was just not herself. Let's put it that way. And that was the most extreme version of this principle. But I find that if I'm too, I don't complain about coffee. It's the stuff that goes in there. People put sugar and cream in there. And I find that if I'm not careful, people will quit my program before quitting the cream and sugar in their coffee. So I that's been my experience.
You mentioned something. I have a question. You mentioned something about, and she talked about it. We've heard people say eat 4 times a day or eat 2 times a day, and cut your meals down to small portions and eat it over a regular period of the day, or don't eat after 6 o'clock at night.
Yeah. So, in theory, if you eat many small meals instead of 3 large meals, then you won't get such a big spike of blood sugar after a big meal because your meals are small. So it spreads the blood sugar evenly out over the course of the day. And then on the other hand, we hear more and more about intermittent fasting, and you shouldn't, let's not eat until dinner time or something like that. And of course, you're going to eat a big meal during the times that you're not fasting, right? But in my experience, What matters much more is the types of foods and the portion sizes rather than the timing of the meals. And so I spend very little time trying to talk people out of breakfast or into breakfast or really messing with the timing of their meal. I want them to let their appetite be their guide. I'm much more concerned about getting the starch way down.
And Heinz has a question. Can you unmute Heinz?
Yeah, I put it in the chat, but I've been reading on statins and that they could lead to diabetes. Now, I'm lucky I don't have it or pre-diabetes, but I'm on statins. Have you seen that happen, doctor?
Yeah, that's a great, very important question. So about an hour ago, I said I stopped prescribing medications like 20 years ago. And I believe in medications and I believe in statins that for many people, it lowers their risk of artery disease and helps clean out the arteries. In my opinion, everyone who has peripheral artery disease should be on a statin unless there's a reason not to. Having said that, statins raise the blood sugar on average 4%. I think the research is very clear. And so for someone with prediabetes, it raises it a little bit. And for someone with type 2 diabetes, it might raise it, up to even 5 or 10, blood sugar points potentially. But I think there's good research and consensus that the small, relatively, that 4% rise in average blood sugar is worth the payoff that you get in terms of reduced plaque in the arteries. And I would never want to convince someone who's already taking a statin to try to reduce it for the sake of improved blood sugar control. Great question.
Thank you.
What do you think about the clinical studies on Ceylon cinnamon? We have one vascular surgeon that when he does prescribe a statin, he actually also prescribe, well, you can't really prescribe, but he suggests to the patients to go to their local supplement store and, get Ceylon cinnamon capsules and use those 2 weeks on and then 2 weeks off, because there are clinical studies that show it can potentially have an impact on A1C and help to keep that regulated. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just looking at that about 6 months ago because the Huffington Post wanted to do an article on cinnamon and they included me in there. So you can look for that online. And, what I found in the research was, there's something to be said about cinnamon. And there's enough small studies to show that, Ceylon cinnamon, can improve, blood sugar and cholesterol levels a little bit. And so I have cinnamon every day in my morning beverage, and it's good, but cinnamon's not going to save us, of course. And I would estimate that cinnamon can lower the A1C by an average of 0.1.
So at least it lowers it a little bit. But you should make sure you do ask your doctor, a nurse practitioner, or someone on your care team before actually, taking those Ceylon cinnamon capsules. But there are studies out there, and then you can bring them in and have them help you determine if it's right for you. Marcia, I did interrupt you, so go ahead and ask your other question.
Well, Heinz was asking you about statins, and I thought that was real interesting. If post-diagnosis of PAD, if you have been able to lower your cholesterol and your triglycerides, I mean, I've done an overhaul on everything through diet, exercise, and smoking cessation. Is it always critical to stay on statins if by lifestyle you have reversed a lot? Or is once the plaque there, it's there to stay?
So plaque can shrink and stabilize and improve. And Dr. Dean Ornish was the first one to really show that convincingly on a low-fat vegetarian diet. But I think all good eating strategies are likely to reduce the amount of plaque in the arteries. But statins do a better job than lifestyle. So let me compare that to, in diabetes, lifestyle is better than drugs. I'm not saying we don't need drugs for diabetes. I'm saying lifestyle is better. When it comes to peripheral vascular disease and plaque in the arteries, I can help someone lose 50 pounds, but it's not going to improve their cholesterol levels nearly as much as a statin would. And with good lifestyle coaching, I can help someone get their LDL down to like 100, but that's not good enough for someone who has known heart disease or peripheral vascular disease. We want that LDL between 50 and 70, and we need a drug to do that. I'm not saying everyone has to take a drug. I'm just saying there needs to be a good reason to not take a statin, in my opinion. And maybe a person just, we're all in control of what we put in our body. But I would say a person should have a very good reason to not be on a statin if they have known plaque in their artery.
And Sally has a question also.
Dr. Dansinger, I've heard, my son in February, he's 21 years old, and he was just diagnosed as a type 2, which the doctor actually classified him as. My first question is, where does it actually, or the cut over from pre to being classified as a type 2? Okay, so where does that border actually, where does it break from pre to type 2? And the other question related to that also is, we actually in South Africa, in the Southern Hemisphere now, we're going into the colder periods. And his levels was actually a little bit up. And because he had an infection, how does a diabetic actually control if he's not on medication?
Yeah, so I think I didn't quite get the first question. It was about going from pre-diabetes to type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, how do they classify that? I mean,
okay.
how do they classify that from one stage to the next stage?
Yeah, so the difference between pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes is just by the blood test. And many years ago, they drew a line that said if your hemoglobin A1C is 6.5 or higher, that's type 2 diabetes. And if it's 6.4 or lower, as low as 5.7, that's pre-diabetes. And if it's below 5.7, then that's normal. Or you can use blood sugar. And if your blood sugar is over 125 milligrams per deciliter, that's type 2 diabetes. So how can you control that without medication? So I do everything in my power to help people stay off of diabetes medications. That's a very different viewpoint from my stance on statins, isn't it? And for diabetes, most people with type 2 diabetes, there's a weight that they can reach that is going to put their diabetes into remission. Remission, I would say, is normal blood sugar or nearly normal blood sugar without medication. And for most of my patients, on average, they're about 35 pounds above their remission weight. And with pre-diabetes, if you just lose 10 pounds, you can delay that pre-diabetes from progressing by like 5 years. Or let's say on average, if you have pre-diabetes, you can delay type 2 diabetes by, every 2 pounds you lose might be enough to delay diabetes by a year or so. If you could lose 10 pounds, you might delay pre-diabetes by 5 years.
And to control the infections like with the flus, because flus and infections actually rise your sugar levels. how do we actually, or how would he actually control that?
Yeah, the infection, you're asking about the infection risk. So people with type 2 diabetes get more than their share of infections because their blood sugar is high. So it's they get a lot of they get dental infections, right? They get much more of their share of dental issues. They can get bladder infections, pneumonia, or all many different types of bacterial infections because their immune system is impaired by high blood sugar. But if you can lower your blood sugar to normal, you can pretty much neutralize your infection risk. And the reason is the white blood cells are kind of blinded by high blood sugar. We need our white blood cells to work properly to clear bacterial infections. And so, if you can just normalize your blood sugar and get a hemoglobin A1C close to 6, that pretty much minimizes the risk of infection down to almost to the normal levels. Of course, I recommend the pneumonia vaccine and all the ways to prevent infections.
You bring up such an important point because we do have vascular specialists who will tell our patients that your sugar is really high. And if we do a procedure now to open up your arteries, whether in a minimally invasive way with a simple puncture or a grander incision, you are at greater risk of one, a quicker reocclusion, and number two, of infection at the incision point, and even with, if it's bypass, for example, a graft that they potentially put in. And so now I'm understanding why, and I think that that was a really great explanation. And I wonder if a lot of the infections that we see might be in part due to someone's high blood sugar. And I don't know if there's any studies. I'm going to have to go look to see if that's the case and how much of a role the high sugar may have played in the susceptibility to that infection.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I think it's just common knowledge among doctors that high blood sugar kind of blinds the white blood cells from being able to see where the infection is. And imagine an ambulance that didn't know where to go, right? And because they can't see out their windshield or something like that. And as soon as the white blood cells can see where to go, then because because the blood sugar has gone from high to normal, it can make a really big difference in someone's healing and their incisions. And so even if someone has high blood sugar, a month before their a planned surgery, spending a month trying to get your sugar under very good control is time and effort that's worth doing, because it can make a very big difference about how you do during a surgery and your recovery afterwards.
If you are not having an acute or experiencing an acute, potentially limb-threatening or life-threatening situation when it comes to that complication of PAD known as peripheral artery disease, should you advocate for yourself with that doctor to say, hey, I know you want to have a procedure. I want to have a procedure. It's going to bring me so much relief. But is it worth working with a dietitian right now to bring down my A1C, or even going on some medication to accelerate that process to bring down my A1C prior to having any sort of procedure?
Yeah, you ask a great question, and unfortunately the answer is not simple, but it depends on the patient and the situation and the doctor and what's realistic. But I would say the way a person can dramatically improve their blood sugar in the course of a month by making dietary changes. So if a person is in a position to go from eating very much better over the course of a month because they're getting ready for surgery, that go for it. Yes, and if it's not an emergency, if it's an elective procedure, and if the hemoglobin A1C is like 9 or 10, because their blood sugar is so high. Let me rephrase that. If someone's blood sugar is running like 200, 300, 400 much of the time, if there's reason to think that you can get their blood sugars closer to 100 or 150, I mean, do everything in your power to do that. And for many people, it's a matter of just not eating figuring out how to eat foods that aren't starch.
Yeah. Just my last question. My last question would be, what would be a safe range for a diabetic or type 2 diabetic to keep the glucose levels at? What range would actually be safe for them, instead of telling them to slam it down to something like 5.5, or what would be a safe range?
Yeah,
I think that's a great question, but it's, as you said, it's going to be a step by step, and for each individual, it's going to be different. But I do want to say, before you get into that answer, is my understanding is even one sugar molecule can wreak havoc on your entire body. It can scratch the artery walls, and allowing for those small LDL particles to eke in there and create trouble and push that wall out, right? And create some damage. But every little step helps, right?
Yes, absolutely. Good point, Kim. So if you're trying to get an A in diabetes, right, you want your blood sugar to be as close to normal as possible. I'd like to see it staying, between 100 and 150 most of the day. And if anyone has access to a continuous glucose monitor and you can track your glucose, over the course of the day, if it's staying, in that range, that's pretty good. But more important is, if you're, not everyone can go from getting an F to an A, right? And so, going from an F to a C, or going from a C to a B is valuable. And so when a hemoglobin A1C close to 6 is really, I think, what you want. And you don't want to have to use a ton of medications to get your A1C to 6. You want to be able to use lifestyle to get your A1C close to 6. And, if your A1C is 9, see if you can get it to 8 or 7, so as
Go
close
ahead, Marcia.
as possible.
Yeah, you keep talking about A1C, and my tests don't say that. They say EAG.
Yes.
So
Okay,
how do we convert that, or no?
Okay, so there's a mathematical equation that relates the two, and you can easily find that online. So you can convert an EAC to an A1C. It's just a mathematical formula. They're saying the same thing.
And another a quick question. You just said, maybe answered, but you said continuous glucose monitor. So I have never been told to monitor my blood, and so I don't know anything about it. I would like to be proactive and do that. Do you recommend it as pre-diabetic?
So right now, the people who have the best access to continuous glucose monitors, and you might have seen people who have one on their on the back of their arm. These are, they're about the size of a quarter, and insurance covers that for people who are on insulin, and maybe some other people who have diabetes but aren't, their blood sugar's not in good control. And then you need a prescription for a continuous glucose monitor, but a person can pay out of pocket for that if their insurance won't cover it and if they have a prescription. So it's running around $100 a month on that, give or take, to have a continuous glucose monitor. But I think in the years ahead, more and more people will have with prediabetes will have access to continuous glucose monitors at a more affordable price, but insurance is not going to pay for that.
What about the finger prick? And should I do it? And if so, what kind do you recommend?
you need a prescription for blood for pricking your finger, and most doctors would be willing to write a prescription for people with diabetes, type 2 with diabetes, or potentially with pre-diabetes. That's a conversation you would have with your doctor. And yeah, if you're if you explain to your healthcare provider how it would make a true difference in you, it can't just be curiosity, right? It has to affect your behavior for them to say, okay, I'm convinced that it's so. But I would expect it in a few years ahead. They'll have watches that you can buy that help you monitor that kind of thing, and so we're not quite there yet. It would not be typical for someone with pre-diabetes to be checking their blood sugar. There's many different types of monitors. They all have pros and cons. I'm not in a position to recommend one in particular.
And Nancy has a question. Nancy, do you want to jump in with your question that I see that you have over on the right-hand side? Go ahead and unmute. Whoops, we can't hear you. Go ahead and unmute. There you go.
Got it. Okay. I'm a 25-year diabetic. Over the past 25 years, I have had, coronary artery disease, a heart attack, and now peripheral artery disease. I've been working really hard on myself for many years. I was able to get, I was 8.4. I got it down to 7.4, my A1C. Then I got it down to 6.2 last fall. And then I went back up to 7 over the winter because I guess I was in the house more, and I had 4 surgeries last year. I'm sure they affected it too. My endocrinologist feels that I can never really reverse diabetes, but I was able to get it down to 6.2, and I'm back on track now. I eat healthy. I walk 8 to 10,000 steps a day. I am doing everything, fighting hard. Is there, I'm sorry. Okay, let me get back in.
You're here.
Okay. Is it possible to reverse my diabetes? That's my goal all these years has been to never go on in, and I've been able to do that. I am on Ozempic.
Yes. Okay, so let me point out that you have type 2 diabetes and not type 1 diabetes.
Right.
And there's not a cure for type 2 diabetes. And when I say reversal, what I'm talking about is making lifestyle changes to get as close to remission as possible. Okay. So I think most people, when they talk about diabetes reversal, would agree that what we're saying is trying to get your blood sugar to normal with no medication. So about a third of my patients who have stuck with me for 3 months, have gotten their diabetes into remission. So their hemoglobin A1C, my definition of remission is an A1C of 6.0 with no medication.
Okay.
Now, some people are just never going to get there no matter what. For some people, the window of opportunity for full remission just does not exist because they're not biologically capable of achieving that. The longer someone has had type 2 diabetes, the harder it is to get into remission. The higher their A1C is to begin with, the harder it is. The more drugs they're on to begin with, but hope is never lost. And to me, reversal means doing the best you can to get as close to remission as possible. So to me, reversal is a behavior, not an outcome. The outcome is trying to get as close to remission as possible and seeing the reduction in A1C. And so we can, in the same way that we can reverse heart disease, meaning you can improve plaque in your arteries and prevent another occurrence of heart disease. We also talk about reversing all sorts of diseases. It doesn't mean they're cured. It means someone is trying to get it completely neutralized. And Yeah, like I said, about a third of my patients have been able to achieve remission. And that's the kind of doctor I want to be, is helping someone who never had any, they didn't even know that it was possible. And to help them understand that, I could say, I think you're about 40 pounds above your remission weight. And let's do everything we can to try to get there. I've done it with many people. And then a patient starts to believe, and they put in the work if they know that they can do it. So,
Douglas?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked about let's talk about food. I hear the word carb. You're supposed to have this many carbs a day in this diet or that. So if I have this amount of carbs, how much does that turn into sugar? Does that affect? So is there a particular food? Is there a certain amount of carbs? Is there a way to tell daily what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing?
Great question. So let me say there's many different eating strategies. They all have different rules. There's low fat eating strategies to reverse diabetes, and there's low carb eating strategies, and there's everything in between. So even though there's strategies that really minimize the fat rather than the carbs, I tend to favor the eating strategies that go after the carbs. And so there's opinions differ, and there's many different eating strategies. And so I'm not going to say that you should stop eating apples. Some people would say, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, and you want plenty of fruit. And others would say, no, fruit is a problem, and because there's sugar in it. And so I cannot, until I'm working with an individual patient, until I know their food preferences and their, what they like to eat and what they've tried before, I would hesitate to personalize an eating strategy. But I will tell you this: starch is the same as sugar. Starch is made of sugar molecules. And when a person eats starchy food, and the main starches are, bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, anything made of flour, those are the main cereal, pancakes, waffles. These things turn to sugar within an hour after eating them. And for people who are fighting high blood sugar, it's like pouring gasoline on a fire. So, sorry, my answer is not quite as is so vague, but
would that depend on, like, I'm an average size, so I'm not. If I lose 10 pounds, I'm gonna get skinny. I don't have but it's the eating part that I want to help with my PAD. I also have CAD, and so it's the eating habits that I'm learning now. The blueberries, because I still like meat. I do like meat. Well, I like chicken, but they're telling me not to eat any red meat or any of that. So
I think Kim's book is a good starting point with the dietary advice in there.
Yeah, I think it really kind of crosses across, all the different strategies, and really gets down to, just substitute this for that, right? It's just little by little, one step at a time, which is so important. I do have a question that came in from someone online, though, if you don't mind. And I'm going to pull that up. It's from Miranda. And she asks, is it about the amount of carbs that is consumed? So this goes along those lines. Is it about the amount of carbs that is consumed in one's diet that turns into sugar through the digestive process that is the actual problem?
It's a great question. So I'm going to say the short answer is yes. It's more complicated than that, but I mean, yes. So the body the body turns starch into sugar. It happens let's say let's just use a piece of bread as an example. So if I ate a piece of bread, it's going to turn to sugar in an hour in the intestinal tract. And if you eat a piece of bread, the same is true. And I don't have to know you to know that, if you eat a piece of bread, it's going to turn into sugar in the intestinal tract within about an hour. And then that's going to get absorbed into your bloodstream and it goes to the liver. And the way the liver handles that sugar, it's glucose at that point. The way your liver handles that sugar depends on you. And it depends on whether you have diabetes. And so that liver is going to store some of that glucose in its, inside the liver cells and release it later. Or it's going to send it off to the rest of the body to feed the cells, or it's going to turn it into fat. And whether it's going to turn that glucose into fat or whether it's going to release it into the body sort of depends on a lot of factors. It depends, but it turns to sugar. And how much of that sugar is going to get into your bloodstream and how much is going to turn to fat sort of depends on the person.
And it depends on how active you are, right? Because especially when you're younger, you have kids that end up, they just consume carb after carb after carb because they're burning it really quickly. And so is that also the same difference as an adult? The more active you are, the more carbs you can eat and that your body needs.
Yeah, that's right. So we all have sugar in our blood. And some people have insulin resistance, meaning it's going to be difficult to get that sugar out of the blood into the tissues. Other people are insulin sensitive. Teenagers, especially athletes, they're all insulin sensitive. It's easy to get the sugar out of the blood into the muscles. And so it's not going to build up as fat in the liver. But if you have insulin resistance, if you're not insulin sensitive because of obesity or type 2 diabetes, a lot of that sugar that's in the blood is just going to be stored as fat in the liver. The liver says, oh, there's already plenty of sugar in the blood, and just, here's more sugar coming in from the gut. I'm just going to have to turn it into fat.
Yes, Linda. Linda, you have a question. You made it on.
I made
Fantastic.
it on. Oh my gosh, I'm so challenged with this technology stuff.
You did great. I'm so proud of you.
Well, it's only taken me weeks.
But you're here now. What is your question, or do you have multiple questions for Dr. Dansinger?
Well, I'm actually thrilled to be on this one today because I was just told I was pre-diabetic about 2 months ago at 6, exactly 6, my A1C. And so I've been fairly rigid until I realized I'm probably eating too much fruit. How bad is fruit compared to the bad carbs? I always think of fruit as the good carbs.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the eating, I said there's many different eating strategies with different rules. And so it depends on the eating strategy. But in the one I use with most of my patients, I would say I'm not that worried about fruit. I'm worried about starch. So fruit is good for weight loss, you see, and there's lots of benefits to fruit. And personally, I don't even get into which fruit is better. And worse fruits might be pineapple or banana or grapes, for example, and better fruits might be berries and maybe citrus or peaches. But I'm much more worried about starch. It's just it's like 3 times worse than fruit, and so I don't
have much starch.
Right. So
no, I don't eat starch.
But that includes starchy vegetables, right? We were told only to have 1 potato per week, for example.
I hardly eat a potato anymore.
Right.
I love them, but I won't eat them now.
So the main way to get that A1C out of the pre-diabetic range. So your A1C is 6.
Yeah.
Pre-diabetes goes from 5.7 to 6.4. You want your A1C out of that pre-diabetic range. You want it to be 5.6 or lower.
Okay.
And the best way to do that is to lose any excess body fat.
Did that.
And so you have no fat to lose, right?
Nope.
Okay.
I've lost 12 pounds since January. So
excellent.
I might be at that point already then, hopefully.
So if you're eating almost no, bread or things made of flour and rice and pasta and white potatoes, then if you need to make another move more aggressively with your eating, then and only then is when you would usually say, all right, well, let's go after the fruit then and limit it to 1 serving a day of berries if you need fruit at all.
Okay, that's
Body
great.
only needs vegetables and lean protein to survive. You don't need fruit to survive, but I hate the idea of having to go a day with no fruit unless it's absolutely necessary.
Well, this was a great show. I love the numbers. The numbers really help guide us, I think, more than just saying, don't do this, don't do that. If you know numbers, it really helps.
Okay.
Dr. Dansinger, what would be one of your no-nos that you like?
Oh, okay, I'll share with you.
You're non-negotiable.
No, so,
You're cheatery.
I love the taste of unhealthy food, like most people do. And my wife makes these chocolate chip cookies, and she also makes this cake. And when it's around, it's irresistible, and it beats my willpower. And so, I would say chocolate chip cookies are practically irresistible for me. And the best way I can avoid them is by not having them in the house. And
you know what I do is me too. I love them. And so I got this I went and read the backs of the packages of all these different cookies. I found this one that's paleo and it uses almond flour and it has very few ingredients in it and you have to add things. So you add, like I use a farm fresh egg from our neighbor's farm. And then I also use natural either coconut syrup, from the coconut sap, or I'll use a raw, maple syrup that doesn't have anything in it, straight from that's actually in bourbon barrels. And then I use the HU chocolate, which uses what's that different sugar from the monk fruit sugar in it. And then I add a lot of walnuts, as many walnuts as I could pack in there. I know there's a little fat in there, and so for some, that's not a good idea. But if I'm gonna have it, those are craveable. I absolutely love them. Are they healthy? No. Are they healthier? Yes. And are they still delicious? Yes. So I've found ways to get around it because also I'm allergic to dairy. I'm allergic to gluten so much. And actually, if you're on Instagram, I just discovered there was an amazing recipe for cake that was like raw cacao, apple, and I think it was just almond flour or something. And there was just like few ingredients. And I don't know what it tastes like yet. I'm going to try it. But I think that going on Instagram and following all those healthy people is really a fun way to try new things that are healthier. And I have one more thing. I just did a video, Dr. Dansinger, which you'd appreciate, which actually worked. I had to try it myself. We have this new series we're doing called Patty's Plate, like our, the Patty's book. So we're bringing it to life called Patty's Plate. And it's non-professional. You can't be a real chef. You have to be a real home cook and, do things the way a normal person would do it. So I went in and I tried this recipe I got off Instagram for a bread alternative, whether you choose to have whatever you choose to put inside your sandwich, whether it's a grass-fed bison burger or whether it's a marinated roasted mushroom with onions and, pickles on it. I have a new bread alternative, which I'm addicted to, and it's avocado. So you mix avocado with an egg and some salt and pepper and garlic. And I use this oat milk cheese, which has very few ingredients, not a lot of fillers. And I put it in the oven and it makes really good, tasty bread that actually works. I was shocked.
Wow.
Absolutely
That's
shocked.
amazing. I love it.
Simple ingredients and all natural. I thought you'd be proud.
I am proud.
And I find that the chocolate chip cookie thing is it's just one of those things, isn't it? And my neighbor brought me we got a deer. My neighbor brought me some more deer meat, and you mentioned that because she left these for me, 2 of them. And it was like, I don't want to eat them because I know they're not good for me, but
you can have one, right? Every once in a while, as long as you're not like, oh, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to have that one chocolate chip cookie, but then I'm going to have the Dr. Pepper. I'm going to have the chips. I'm going to have as just, one after another, right? Dr. Dansinger, it's like, okay, pick your non-negotiable and that 90% good, 10%, okay, you can cheat.
I've been using the 90% rule with my patients for 15 years, and I think it's held up very well. And people understand what you're talking about. People say, that it resonates with people. It makes sense. And how you use your, 10% treats is the same as 90% strict. And how you use those treats different from person to person.
And I have one more question, and then I know I don't want to take up your whole day, Dr. Danzinger, maybe if someone else, just to finish up with other questions, but you touched on it a little bit, but I want to drive home this point because I see this often that when someone is diagnosed in many cases with the type 2 diabetes, the first inclination, especially since we're seeing a big push on television and the pharma reps visiting these doctors, we're seeing more and more, physicians actually prescribing the Ozempics and all of these others, these quick fixes, and then also the general insulin before trying anything else. For the patients out there that are advocating for themselves, what would be an indication to that patient that, okay, I should go on these medications, I should go on insulin, 2 separate things, or do I have time and the ability to actually try a lifestyle modification myself, get that exercise up, get the diet in check, get a referral to a dietitian or a program like yours? What's that indication that
that's a terrific question. So I'm going to oversimplify it by saying, no matter how high your A1C is, and I would use the A1C to guide, no matter how high your A1C is now, there's a good chance that you could get it below 7. And if you can get it below 7 without medication, I don't like to start medications if the A1C is below 7. And if you cannot keep it below 7 without medication, despite all your best efforts to lose weight and to eat right and to exercise, if after 3 months you're just not able to budge that A1C anymore and it's going to stay above 7, that's the time. Don't wait any longer. Don't don't pretend that it's just going to go down on its own. If you're not able to do more on lifestyle and you're stuck above 7, that it's important to start medications. at that time. But if a patient came to me and their A1C is above 7 and they say, I want to do everything I can to lower it through lifestyle, I wouldn't start drugs at that point.
And for those that are on the insulin as a type 2, is it possible to, and what would it take to actually get off of that?
Yeah. So how do we discontinue drugs? That's a great question, including insulin. So first I want to get the A1C close to 6, right? If we can't through lifestyle change get the A1C close to 6, then I wouldn't reduce any medications. But as the A1C gets close to 6, 6 to 6.5, then that's the time to start reducing medication. So of course I want to lower someone's insulin dose first, and then, see how low we can get the insulin. And if you can keep your A1C, close to 6 with half as much insulin, great. And if you can continue to lower the insulin till it's gone and still keep your A1C around 6.5, great. And then the next drug, maybe it's the glyburide or the glipizide to go next. Or if you're not on insulin, but you're on, glipizide or glyburide, that's the first one I like to get rid of, because that can push the blood sugar. I mean, that's that. And these weekly injectables, the Ozempic and the Mounjaro, I think I like those drugs. And they're for people who can't get their diabetes under control through lifestyle change, but it helps people lose weight, and it's a good complement to lifestyle change. And so it's another great conversation to have that we can't get into too much detail here.
Joshua has a question. Joshua, you want to unmute and ask?
Hi, doctor. What's the turnaround time for a grade A patient from 7 to 6?
Oh, 3 months. 3 to 6. I mean, there have been dozens of times where I've helped a patient get from 7 to 6 within 3 months.
And Robert has a question. He has a series called Pad Life Outdoors. He's a peripheral artery disease patient, and he wants to know what advice you would have for a diabetic patient who is trying to get their exercise in. They schedule a long walk, a long hike. What is a really good snack for them to bring along with them that's portable and satisfying?
Great question. So a small amount of nuts can go a long way. They're portable, they're light. You can do that. Jerky, like turkey jerky, for example, would be another good one. I'm not in love with protein bars, but because I wouldn't consider them like real food, but there's a potential place for those. Some people might carry a hard-boiled egg, with them. We're looking for things that are portable, don't need refrigeration, are tasty. A bag of carrot sticks would be another, or celery or something like that. I'd love to hear other thoughts.
What I do is I bring some, I actually make, once a month, I make these little small baggies of some dried wasabi peas, and a wide array of nuts. And I just do a handful, put it in the bag so I can take it and go, along with a little baggie of just a few berries, blueberries especially, that I can take with me. And then I have the protein and the berries.
Love it.
I cut up vegetables and I take them every day with me to that. So when I'm at the gym and I get really hungry,
yeah,
I have asparagus. I do it in my this is a blueberry container.
Yes.
So I fill it up with carrot sticks, whatever I have, green beans. Well, the green beans are steamed asparagus. And oh, the sugar snap peas. Are sugar snap peas high in sugar?
Not so much. I mean, it's much less than fruit.
Right.
Despite the name.
Okay.
There's a lot of fiber in those too. So I never worry about that.
Yeah. Well, I eat the whole thing. As soon as I come out of the gym, I eat my whole blueberry container.
Any other
What
thoughts
are your
on that?
thoughts on what are your thoughts on honey, doctor?
Honey? Not good. Not good. So, honey, is honey better than other forms of sugar? Most scientists would say, well, your body can't tell the difference between, between different types of sugars. And so a teaspoon of honey or a teaspoon of agave or a teaspoon of high fructose corn syrup, the body can barely tell the difference. Having said that, I think honey is a good condiment, and condiments are for making healthy food more exciting and appealing. And so I would actually encourage people to use a little bit of honey when needed to add excitement to things like plain yogurt or other healthy foods that could benefit from just a little bit of sweetness. So I think there's a place for that sort of thing, but it's sugar. And so your body treats it like any other kind of sugar.
What do you think about artificial sweeteners?
Great question. Do we have time?
Because I just started using them when I became pre-diabetic, but I know they're controversial. So
artificial sweeteners, in my opinion, are better than sugar. So is a Diet Coke better than a regular Coke? I would say yes. Is a Diet Coke worse than water? Yeah. And so, I think stevia, I wouldn't even call that an artificial sweetener. I would call that a natural, calorie-free sweetener. That would probably be the best one. A lot of people don't like the aftertaste of that. And then, the American Diabetes Association and most mainstream nutrition authorities would say there's not that much research to say that artificial sweeteners are much of a problem. And you'll get some experts who have very strong feelings against them and say that's probably worse than sugar. I mean, they are made in a laboratory, and no one would be surprised if we learned down the road that they're worse than we realized. And there is some research to say it promotes insulin resistance. It's not good for your intestinal bacteria. Is it better than sugar? Probably. I mean, we should all. So, but if it helps you reduce your sugar intake, I think that's it. So I have mixed feelings, and I would say there's a middle ground when it comes to artificial sweeteners. It's not the worst thing, but
right.
it's
I mean,
not
if
the
you
best
need it
thing.
for your coffee to transition, then I mean, I had to with my lattes. I had to go from 4 pumps of vanilla in it, and then I knew I needed it in there, but I needed to gradually get myself off of the sugar. And now I just drink plain coffee, fresh ground, no matter what. I don't want anything in it, actually. It tastes really weird with any sort of sweetener. But I'm curious, I was a big fan of monk fruit sugar. And then I discovered that now, before it seemed pure, but now they're putting in, is it erythritol, which I'm concerned about even the name and its potential to cause harm because it's manufactured, I would imagine.
Erythritol is a controversial sweetener, but it wasn't very controversial a year ago. So monk fruit, right? There's an extract of the monk fruit that's very intensely sweet. Let's say it's 600 times sweeter than sugar. And you can't just put monk fruit extract into a packet because it would be so minuscule that you wouldn't be able to see it there. So they mix the monk fruit extract with other stuff so that you can fill a packet of, like, you've seen a packet of monk fruit is 99% erythritol and 1% monk fruit extract. And much of the sweetness is coming from the monk fruit extract because it's so intensely sweet. But to add bulk, they use other sweeteners, especially erythritol. So erythritol is absorbed and then into the body, and then it leaves into the urine. So you excrete erythritol in the urine, and until a year ago, no one could find any problem with that, any safety issue. But about a year ago, some researchers found that it can slightly raise the risk of blood clotting if you are already prone to blood clots. So, for example, if you have peripheral artery disease, the last thing you need is to raise your blood clotting risk. And it's a dose related. So the amount of erythritol, which people are getting from monk fruit packets, or just using erythritol as it's not that rare of a sweetener. It might raise the risk of clotting slightly. So for a regular healthy person, it's probably a non-issue. But for someone with peripheral vascular disease, I'd stay away from erythritol, which means they should avoid monk fruit because that's really mostly erythritol.
Good information. I want to get just one more question in from Nancy. Nancy, what's your question? Oops, Nancy, up there you go.
Okay, I just unmuted. Yeah, I have always been addicted to drinking milk, so I went down to 1% milk, and I try to limit myself to 1 or 2 small glasses a day. I also went to plant-based butter instead that I like, and also I use something called RX sugar, which is an allulose, and it's right here. And it's supposed to be low glycemic. It's sugar reimagined, 0 calories, net carbs, glycemic. I use like maybe a half a teaspoon in my coffee. So how about those things? What are your thoughts on? I'd be interested to see what the doctor thought about those.
That's a loaded question filled with lots of different
yeah, I'm trying
balls to drop.
It's hard. I've been a diabetic a long time. So.
Remind me the first part of your question, please.
Well, dairy. How do you feel about dairy?
Yeah, milk. Okay, so just quickly on milk. I grew up in Minnesota, which is a dairy state, and I drank milk with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And they served it at school lunch. And later we learned, also in Minnesota, that dairy fat is a high risk for heart disease. And so once they figured that out, they started promoting skim milk, which I have mixed feelings about. So once you take the fat out of dairy, I think it's healthier, but there's protein and lactose sugar combined in milk. So a cup of skim milk is maybe 90 calories, and you could drink unsweetened almond milk, for example, or cashew milk for 25 or 30 calories per cup. So it has a third of, unsweetened nut milks have about a third of the calories. These are the commercial nut milks, not a homemade nut milk. And they have calcium in it and vitamins. And so I think a glass of milk, like skim milk or 1%, is perfectly fine. I would usually not steer a patient away from having a glass of skim milk a day, but I wouldn't say like 3 cups a day like I used to drink when I was a kid. And there's something to be said, I think, for these commercial nut milks that are 30 calories per cup. I think they have a place. So milk's all right.
What about plant-based butter?
Yeah. Well, okay, plant-based butter is healthier than regular butter because of the amount of dairy fat, right? So butter is pure dairy fat, which clogs up the arteries, no question about it. But these plant-based butters, it matters how liquid it is. And so when it comes to fats, the main thing to care about is how solid is it at room temperature? And that's, I think, the same question as what's it going to do to my arteries? So if a fat is liquid at room temperature, like olive oil, then it's better than a plant-based butter, which is solid at room temperature. And plant-based butter is better than regular butter, but it's not as good as something that's softer or more liquidy, like especially oils. So they make this plant butter by adding like coconut oil, which is, going to be solid or semi-solid at room temperature. So that's how I think about it. How liquidy is it at room temperature tells how it's going to treat your arteries.
Okay.
I have a question. How do you feel about now I use a ton of olive oil thanks to Kim, and they have the store I go to, they have all these flavored olive oils. So they have butter flavored olive oil. And of course I love butter, but you can't eat it. How do you feel about a flavored? Because I don't know what it's flavored with.
So it's probably not flavored with actual butter because
Right.
that would sink to the bottom or rise to the top. But there's some chemical that is buttery flavor. It's probably also in that movie popcorn. And we're often eating foods that have flavorings in them, whether it's low sugar yogurt, or whether it's a lot of the foods that come in packages have artificial flavors in them. They're probably harmless, and adding a little bit of butter flavored chemical to oil is not ideal, but we all want our food, we want to enjoy our food, right? And so if you use what I call the condiment principle, right? Sometimes a little small amount of sugar makes, something more appealing, or a small amount of salt makes something more appealing. A little bit of cheese makes a salad more exciting, and a little bit of butter flavor to the olive oil. Sometimes, I think there's a place for that. So I'm not going to say anything real negative about that. I think other people would say, ugh, why would you ever want to do that? But I think there's the middle ground has value. So that's my there's
some school of thought that traditionally there are these heart disease reversal books that say get rid of all the oils are bad. But I think what they're talking about is really the store shelf oils, that many of them are rancid and they lose that antioxidant quality of early harvest, hand-picked, cold pressed olive oil that you might get that's in limited production and more fresh. We do have a couple of cardiologists and one vascular surgeon that literally prescribe a tablespoon of olive oil before the 3 main meals of the day. If you're using a very high-end, highly antioxidant rich olive oil. And that's something that actually my dad and I do now as well. And it was able to clinically lower he was very high in inflammation. And just that act, coupled with a turmeric extract capsule, seemed to lower his inflammation in his body.
You've seen the proof with your own eyes, Kim. And there might not be convincing research studies that show that that prescribing, a tablespoon of olive oil a day does that. But what all the research studies that I've seen show is that that the type of fat you eat makes a very big difference in your risk of artery disease. It's one of the most important things when it comes to protecting your artery, is that ratio of unsaturated fat to saturated fat. And so by having more olive oil, you're raising the ratio, you're improving the ratio of healthy fat to unhealthy fat. There's a lot of research that shows that. So, but if you're trying to lose weight, having, a tablespoon of olive oil or any other fat, it's going to be about 100 calories, and that can make the difference. So it's complicated.
Again, it depends on the individual. Dr. Dansinger, we really appreciate your time. Final thoughts and final takeaways.
Food is medicine, and it's better than pills. And one of the main symptoms of our healthcare system being broken is that doctors have failed to do their duty to use food as medicine and to remind us how the way we eat has so much to do with the way we feel, the way our bodies are. And it's never too late to use your food as medicine. The older we get, the more important healthy eating becomes and makes the biggest difference in how our brains work. And so, I'm proud that, Kim, you've provided an opportunity for all of us to participate together. I'm proud to have been invited as a guest to what you've created, and I look forward to the next conversation.
Thank you. If people want to find out more about your program, if they are in Massachusetts or in Florida, what is your website that they can visit?
Yeah, so my website is called diabetesreversalpartners.com.
Diabetesreversalpartners.com. Fantastic. And do you have any sort of publications or any blog that they can follow? Or are we going to start a blog over on ours with all of your stuff? Our YouTube channel, give you a playlist?
I don't have a blog, and I don't have a book yet. And I am on Facebook and Instagram, though.
And
you need to come to Texas so we can get. You really do need to come to Texas so that we can get what I can't keep up with everything I learned today, but you need to come to Texas so we can work. I want to work with you right now.
Thank you for your invitation.
Texas. Yeah, we do have a very big market there, so that would be a really good one for you. But we do, if you want to actually read some of his thoughts in print as well, you can go ahead and go on Amazon, and you can order the Food for Thought book. You can find it by searching peripheral artery disease, and you will see, there you go. Douglas actually is showing the book. Keep holding that up for 1 second, Douglas. Just go ahead and take a look. There's the Food for Thought book, and you can pick it up on Amazon. You can also go ahead and go to padhelp.org, and you can contact us if you can't afford to get the book. It's only $20 on there. It's mainly printing costs for Amazon. We don't really make money off of it. But if you need it for free, let me know. Go ahead to padhelp.org and message us through the website, and we'll go ahead and get you a copy. But it's also free online on that website. There is a simple booklet tab on there that you can go ahead and just read it online as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And Dr. Michael Dansinger, again, we appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.